Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. So I've actually just finished making the video, but I'm just going to show you at the very beginning what you're kind of working towards. So this is a template of the report that you're working towards. So every time you see these dots, you should be writing something. I'm going to explain what you need to do in the video. So you're going to have some text here and some text here. But you are working towards creating tables that look like this, right? Some cross tabs. Pie charts. You're going to be creating a table that looks like this, that includes, the percentage of people in some of these different categories, as well as doing some stats tests and finding some p-values. Okay, so that's really important. And a 2D column chart where you can compare some results from two of the different groups. All right. Oh, and of course, at the reference, you will be referencing the textbook. So you do need to put the textbook as a reference at the end. Okay, so that's what your paper you're kind of working towards. This is the basics of it. Good luck. If you have any questions, course Q&A. If you have any questions about the Excel, maybe you get stuck on an Excel, take a screenshot of your Excel file and post that. It would just really help explain what it is you're doing. And come to working office hours on Monday, November the 4th. This is due Tuesday, November the 5th. Come to working office hours on Monday, November the 4th. Either in person is preferable, but I'm also going to be on Zoom and work on this and ask questions. All right, that's it. Good luck. See you soon. Bye. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. This is the video instructions for the Excel report for HTR741 in fall 2024. This is where 15% of your grade. The deadline is Tuesday, November the 5th. Here, you should have this document open. It's available on D2L, and this is, follow the instructions that I show you. So the purpose of this assignment is to get you familiar with the basic functions and processes of how to analyze the data that we collected for our survey for Downtown Young BIA to create pie charts, column charts, tables, crosstabs, and statistical analysis too. This gives you the foundations for that, and then I'm expecting you to take what you're learning from this video and this individual assignment and then do even more for your group project. So as we go through this, I want you to think about, I could use this process or this idea and analyze a different question, or I could change this a little bit and do something a bit different, because I want you to show that you're taking the skills from this and applying them in more ways to more data to create more tables and so on. So, the purpose of this also is to come up with the evidence for recommendations. Like a big part of your group paper is going to be, what do you suggest Susie should do? Any recommendation that you come up with must be supported by evidence. So if you want to say you should create more events that have free food or live music or whatever, or you should target people using TikTok or Facebook or whatever, then you need evidence to support that. And you can use the interviews to some extent, but you must also be using evidence from the survey. So think about that as well. Your recommendations have to be based upon evidence, and I'm looking for you to use evidence from the survey to support your ideas for what Susie should do. This is an independent assignment. So you can talk with your group mates, you can share ideas, you can discuss, you can point and look at screens, but you cannot type into other people's work. Everything that you submit must be from your own keyboard of you typing it, all right? So just to be clear, if you type into other people's work, that is also considered engaging with academic misconduct. And you should not be using AI for this assignment at all. There is the possibility that we can use AI for the final paper, but we'll talk about that in class a little bit more. But you should not be using AI for this Excel assignment. You should use this document as a template. So, here are some instructions with the rubric. You then delete all of this stuff, and then you'll see it starts on page 4. This is how your paper should look. So we're going to start to build this, and this should be the foundations of your assignment that you're going to submit. But once you're ready, you're going to finish this, and then you're going to delete all of these guidelines and rubric and so on, and that's what you're going to be doing. You don't need a title page for this assignment. You only need to reference the textbook, so I'm expecting you to reference the textbook, but that's all you need to reference. And your paper should look like exactly what we're doing right now. So that, it shouldn't look wildly different in any way. So if you're creating tables with different formats or different ideas or different variables, then you are not going to get good grades for this particular individual assignment. All right. You're going to submit 2 files. You're going to submit a PDF version of this paper, and that's what we will grade. That's where your grades will come from. But you're also going to submit the Excel file, and you need to do that. We're not going to grade the Excel file, but it must be there so that we can go into the Excel file and see where everything in your PDF report comes from. So if you've got a chart or a table or a whatever in your PDF report, we need to be able to go into your Excel file and see that you actually did it, right? So you have to do that. So 2 files, you're going to submit 2 files. There are 3 parts to this report. The first one is your introduction, same as you've done before. So if you haven't figured this out, you can use the same introduction that you use for your lit review and say client, knowledge gap, research purpose, and research questions. I just want you to reinforce that and don't just copy and paste it, read it so you're clear, right? Oh, my cat's trying to jump on my desk. Just gonna go and feed my cat because he's gonna annoy me otherwise. All right, start again. So that introduction, straightforward. Then you need a sampling critique. So this is a paragraph that's going to critique how we did the survey. And so we covered this in class last time. So you need to identify, explain, and critique each of the following. So the target population, who is the target population? I'll give you this one for free. It's current TMU students. So you need to identify that and explain that. There's not much to critique about that really, but you just need to say that. Then you need to identify and explain and critique the sampling strategy or strategies that we used. Maybe I'll change that to be strategy or G's. So there might be more than one, I guess. So, for example, you might think it's random sampling strategy. It's not. That's not the right answer, right? But you identify that it's random. You'll explain what that means. That means that every member of the target population has an equal chance of being asked the survey. And then you critique it. What's good about that and what's bad about that? And this is where you need to be using the textbook to reference your explanations, your definitions, and your critique. What's good and bad about it, okay? So this is where you need to be doing that. So then you need to identify, explain, and critique the sampling frame or frames that we used. So of the target population, what's the list or version of a list that we've used to draw our sample from the target population from? What's the sample size? That's pretty straightforward. How many people did we actually survey in the end? And what's our sampling ratio? That's the sample divided by the target population. I'll give you a bit of information in a minute about where to find some of that. And then you also need to identify, explain, and critique the margin of error. So I'm going to show you how to identify it, right? So you can come to this link, which is by SurveyMonkey, and it gives you an online calculator. And this is the website, and this is where you enter your target population size. I'm just going to enter 10,000. That's not the answer for this project. You've got to figure out what it is. The confidence level is always 95%. That means we're 95% confident in our results. 19 times out of 20, that's the same thing. 19 out of 20 is 95%. And then you enter your sample size. And this gives you a margin of error. And so you've identified it. In this example, it's plus or minus 4%. That's not the right answer for our project, just to be clear. But you identify it, you explain it. Well, if you're in class, you'd have figured out that means that we are 95% confident that our results fall within plus or minus of this number. And when you critique it, is that useful? Is it good? Could it be better? Right? That's what I want you to see you do for this. Great. Then, so that's your sampling critique. And then you're going to do some results. And that's what we're going to spend most of the time in this video, figuring out how do we use Excel to come up with the results, to create pie charts, tables, and all that kind of stuff. Under each, or with, sorry, above each result, either a table, a chart, or a pie chart, column chart, you need to give me a couple of sentences that summarize the main results and what it means. We'll go through a couple of examples as we do this. So a couple of useful links. you do need Microsoft Office for this project. So that's either you need it for Word, because we're going to be using Word to create the report, and Excel. So you can get that for free. So you can click on that link and it's going to bring you to this website. Oh, not that one. Where is it? This one here. Great. And so you can come here and you can follow the instructions to download Microsoft Office for free. This is for either Windows or PC or a Mac. You know, I did have a student last year have an issue with Chromebooks. If you have a Chromebook, it might be a bit tricky. So if you only have access to a Chromebook, either consider using a computer in a computer lab, or come and speak to me and we'll figure something out. All right, but hopefully you've got access to either a Windows laptop or a PC or a MacBook laptop or desktop. Right. Great. So follow those instructions. Make sure you use your Toronto MU address. You need to come up with a authenticator code using Microsoft. If you get stuck, you can go to the 7th floor IT office, and they should be able to help you out as well. But do that sooner than later, because if you wait to the very last day and then you get trouble kind of getting access to Excel, you know, you're going to waste your time, and that's going to be stressful. So make sure you've got this as soon as possible. And then we've got links to the data that we're going to use and the survey we're going to use. You know, I'll just show you the survey real quick. And so this is the survey that we used. This is useful just so sometimes we can just see the questions. It's just helpful as a reference point sometimes. We've also got this link to the analysis tool pack. We're going to come to that later in the video. And so this is the data. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. And then there's your rubric. So make sure you're clear about the rubric. Your sampling critique is 30% of your grade. And then you're going to give me 4 main results, 4 main tables and charts. We're going to do some t-tests and some chi-square tests. So this is statistical tests. We're going to cover that later in the video. Your paper needs to look like the paper I'm preparing for you right now. So it has to be the same format. The colors of the charts I'm not so fussed about, but it has to look, you know, same font, same style, all that kind of stuff. And then you need to give me just a couple of sentences of the interpretation. And then there is that penalty if you do not give me the Excel file as well. All right. So here's your template paper. Every time you see 3 dots, I'm expecting you to write something. So you need to write the introduction, right? As outlined above. You need to give me a sampling critique, you know, a paragraph or 2 that critiques all those different items. And then you're going to start giving me some results from the survey. Okay. So let's get started. Let's go to the data, the link. And this is in Google Sheets. We are not going to use Google Sheets. We're going to use Excel. And the reason for that is Excel just still has a few things that Google Sheets doesn't do. And so it's just a bit more powerful and a bit more user-friendly. So we're going to come to File, Download, Microsoft Excel. It's going to download however your browser downloads. And you click on it. And there we go. Opens up in Excel. So first thing, we're going to need to click Enable Editing. Maybe that shows up for you or not, but make sure you do that. It's just like a safety thing. Don't worry about it. And okay, so let's just be clear about what we're looking at. So we have, this is all of our data. There's a lot of information here, right? Let's make it, you don't need to do this. I'm just going to show you like how much information we have. Like, look at all this data, right? So we've got to make sense of this and turn this, we've got to be able to interpret this. There's a lot going on. So let's look. The very top row, these are the questions that we asked, right? So do you consent? You know, is it good for restaurants? Is it good for shopping and so on? So that top row, that's all of the questions that we asked. So it means that each row is a different person. So I've given each person a number. So I've taken out all the emails. I've taken out which group they gave their points to. I've taken out the time that they responded to the survey. So I'm trying to keep it confidential. So we've just given everybody an ID number, okay? If we go to the very bottom, we can see that we had in total 377 people responded. But we need to clean this up a little bit first, right? Because some people, we need to make sure that everybody meets the criteria. There's a couple of things we need to do. So we can use a filter to do this first. So I'm going to highlight the top row. by left clicking on number 1, and it highlights. And then on my home ribbon, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to sort and filter, and I'm going to add a filter. And you'll see here then that we get these little drop downs in each of these cells. And so we need to check that everybody, well, let's look. If we go to B and if you consent, we can click on that and it shows us that yes, that's the only possible response. It doesn't tell us how many people said yes, but it just tells us that the only answer, in the only phrase, the only entry in this column is yes. So everybody gave consent. This is about whether we can use their data for AI. We're not going to do that for this particular report. We may do it for our final project. So we're just going to ignore that for now. We're not going to delete it, but we're just going to keep that there. And I'll just show you some people said no, they don't want their data being put into AI. So we're going to have to be respect that. And then under D, we've got, are you currently a TMU student? And we need to make sure that we have TMU students only. So we can click on here and we can see that there is a no. So there might be one or more people that have said, no, they're not a TMU student. So we need to delete them because they're not part of our target population. So I can come over here and I'm going to deselect yes. And I can see there are 3 people that said no. So we're going to delete them. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to left click here and highlight the 3 rows. And then I'm going to right click. And just to show you here, so this is not deleted those other responses. It's just hiding them from view, right? So that's what we've done. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to delete rows. There we go. And then I'm going to come back over here to my filter and I'm going to select all. Great. And that shows them back. There's also one other question. I don't know whether you noticed this, but I did ask an attention checking question towards the end of the survey. This is a common technique just to make sure that you're not getting people just clicking the same number all the way through and that they're actually paying attention. So it's a good process to do. So I asked people to show you are still paying attention, please select number 4. So most people did, which is great, but we are going to delete people that did not select number 4 because they may not have been paying attention to the rest of the survey. So we can click on the filter over here and CH. I'm going to deselect 4 because I'm not going to delete those. And I'm going to click OK. And we've got this many people, what, about 10. So again, I'm going to highlight these. And then I'm going to right click. And I'm going to delete rows. There we go. And then I've got to make sure that I come back over here and I select everybody there too. Great. Okay, so we've cleaned the data. Perfect. So just to be clear, if just to move around the data, I find I use this a lot on a Windows laptop anyway. It might be slightly different on a Mac, but you can still do it. On a Windows, I use Control, and then I can press the arrows, and it takes me to the end where there's where the next blank cell is, right? So I can go down, or I can go across. It brings me all the way back to the beginning. It just jumps around the data a bit more. So if I go to the very bottom, I've now got, well, I've still got ID number 377, but because I deleted some, I go down to 365. So you should have, the last row of data should be on row 365, which means we've got 364 respondents, right? Because the top row is the questions, and then every other row is a respondent. So we have 364 sample size. That's the answer to the question. Great. So the next thing we need to do is we actually need to change all of these words into numbers. So for example, like we see 4 agree. So at the moment, if we ask Excel to give us like an average score or to do something with this, it's not going to be able to do it because it's actually a text, because it's got in that cell, it's 4 space agree, and it can't calculate that. It can't come up with an average. So we need to change all of these texts into just numbers. And so this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to start with 1, strongly disagree. And so I'm just going to copy that, Control C. I'm then going to do Control F. If you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command C and Command F. And we get this find and replace window. So I'm going to click on replace, and then I'm going to paste 1, strongly disagree into there. And I'm going to say, go and find all of those and replace them with just 1. That's it. So then I hit replace all, and you can see it go, and I've got 7,205 replacements. So you should have that same number when you do the same thing. If you don't, it's possible that you haven't cleaned the data, just like I showed you to a couple of minutes ago. So go back and have a look at that, all right? So let's go through the rest of them. So that was 1, strongly disagree. So let's do 2, just disagree. So copy and paste it and replace it with the number 2, replace all, 5,263 changes. And then we want 3, agree. So we're just gonna go up the scales. Make sure you always change the number, right? Because you don't want to change 3 agree to 2, because then it's going to get messy and you're going to have too many 2s and no 3s and so on, right? So just be really careful that you're doing this properly. I have 4,069 when I change 3 agree to 3. And then I've got 3 neutral. Oh, we've got a few different questions, right? So actually let's stick with the agrees for now. So I'm going to do 4 strongly agrees to 4, replace all. I've got 1,321. Yeah, that's all those ones there. And then because some of our questions we had 4-point scales and 5-point scales, so they're going to be slightly different. So for example, the ones here, this is a 5-point scale question, but this one was the same as this one, right? In the 4-point scale. And the 2 was the same, but 3 is now neutral in this one. So we're going to do 3 neutral. Replace with 3, and I've got 1,821 replacements, and then 4 agree to 4, 2,124 replacements, and then I've got 5 strongly agree to 5, 1,024 replacements. And then I'm just going to skim through the data and make sure there's no other text that I need to change. Oh, yeah, it's this one. Yep. We got the never, sometimes, and rarely. So let's start with number 1. So 1, never. So let's just start with 1, never. I'm going to replace that with 1. So that's from 1 never to 1 is 539 replacements. And we've got 2 rarely, which we're going to change to 2. $811 replacements, and then 3 sometimes. $1,200 replacements, and 4 often. $930 replacements, and then 5 always. $326 replacements. I'm just going to skim through and make sure I haven't missed anything. So these I don't know. So we're just going to leave those there for now. We're not actually going to use this data in this assignment. You could choose to use it for your final assignment. You know, what's your perceptions of downtown Young? Does it have good restaurants, shopping, and so on? So you could choose to use that. For now, we're not going to use that. So I'm just going to leave I don't knows as I don't knows. And I think that's it. So hopefully you've got the same. You should have the same. If not, you're going to have to do a few undos and go back and make sure you got it right. So now we're ready to start creating some tables and some charts and so on. So let's go and check out what it is that we have to do first. So first of all, we're going to compare the sample with our target population. So that means we're going to look at something that we know about our target population, some characteristics, and see how closely our sample matches up with that. So that gives us a sense of how representative our sample is. So let's go to this website. So I actually found this already. If you just Google, I'll show you, let's start from the beginning. We'll do TMU student statistics. And it's actually that first link. And we want enrollment and faculty counts. And here we go. Here's some data that the university has for us. So this is just first years, which isn't our target population. We want all years. And actually, we just got to double check to see if we've got any graduate students in our sample. So I'll just quickly check that. So that question was towards the end. So I'm going to go towards the end and I can see, yes, which faculty. And It's the Yates School of Graduate Studies. So how many do we have? Oh, we just have one person from there. So we're going to ignore them for now. We're just going to forget that they're there for now. It's not best practice, but that's what we're actually going to do. So we'll come back to this website, and we're going to look at undergraduate students all years enrollment. So we can click on Excel. That downloads the Excel file for us. We can open it up. Okay, so here is the data. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you guys. Make sure we're on the most recent year. Okay, even though it's not the same year, at least it's close-ish. It's close enough. And so we can see that, well, this is the column that we're kind of interested in, the number of students. So there are 40,153 people who are current undergraduate students at TMU. That's useful for you, for your part of your sampling critique. And we're going to compare some key information. So we've got a couple of things. We've got students by the faculty, which is a question we've asked, so we could compare against that. And we've also got students by international and domestic, right? Because we could actually do this minus this would give us domestic. So there's a couple of things we could do there. I think for now, we're going to do the faculty. So I want you to follow along and do this. So if you're using a Windows, you can. There's a little trick. I don't think this works on a Mac. You might have to do this in the old-fashioned way, but we're going to try and build the table. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on Arts, and then I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to click on Number of Students, right? Which shows me that there's 5,373 students in the Faculty of Arts. And I'm going to keep holding Control, and I'm going to go to Ted Rogers, and then 11,800. Select that. You see they're all highlighting these individual cells. Creative School, 6,028. Community Services, 6,746. Engineering, 5,949. And then Science, 4,243. And actually I want that total too, so I'm going to just click on, well, actually we'll do that afterwards. So I've got all of those individual cells highlighted, and I'm going to just copy those. And I'm just going to paste them to the side. There we go. Okay, so just a little bit of a shortcut. And then I want the total as well. And the total is 40,153. I can actually just check, does that make sense? So I can, if I click here and I come home and auto sum, it's just going to add those up, 4,000. Yeah, so it makes sense, right? Great. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go, I'm going to go back to my data. All right. So I'm going to open up a new worksheet. I'm going to call this population versus sample. You know, you don't have to call it exactly that, but it might be useful. Great. Okay, so we're beginning to build our table. So now we need to find the same numbers, the equivalent numbers from our sample. So this is how we're going to do it. We come to full data. We're going to left click on this square in the corner, so it highlights the whole data. We're then going to go to Insert, Pivot Table. And right now the default is to open a new worksheet. We actually want to put it on an existing worksheet because we want to go back to population versus sample. So I'm going to put existing worksheet. I'm just going to click this button. I'm going to go back to pop versus sam, and I'm going to put it, where am I going to put it? I'll just put it here for now. Great, doesn't matter. Hit enter, and there we go. We get our pivot table. So what a pivot table does is it helps us create crosstabs from the data really easily and quickly summarize some of the key information. You should have this pivot table fields list pop up. If you do not see this, you need to click on the pivot table, and then somewhere here it's pivot table analyze, and it's the field list you want under show. So if I unshow it, you don't see it. Do show it, it's there. So that's what you need to find. All of these come from the top row of our data. So it's basically all of the questions that are in our survey. And now we can kind of click and drag and move these around so we can try and create a table. So we need to recreate this table from our sample. So this is all about what faculty students are in. And I know from memory that it's at the end, so I can scroll down towards the end and I can find it. You could also search here. So if you know that the word faculty is in there, I don't actually know what was the word it was. Oh yeah, it was faculty. So you could just type in faculty and then it filters out all of those points, right? So I'm going to put faculty into my rows. I'm just going to click and drag. And you can see it populates that there. And then I want to put that also in the values. That's what I want to count. Great. So I can see now that I've got 364 responses. I've got 5 people that prefer not to answer and 1 person that's from the grad school. So I could either just ignore those or just, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you can do this. You've got to filter within the pivot table. So I'm just going to get rid of those. So I'm going to get rid of my prefer not to answer and my Yates School of Graduate Studies and my blanks. I'm going to get rid of the blanks too, just to tidy up. There we go. And now I want to kind of just recreate, I want to do a comparison side by side. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to move this to the side. I just prefer working to the side of it rather than above. So I'm just going to tidy this up. You can do the same, you don't have to. I'm going to get rid of all this formatting. I don't like these colors and the different fonts. So the easiest way to do that is I'm going to click on a blank cell and then I'm going to come to this Format Painter button, which is really useful. I'm going to click that and then I'm just going to highlight the area that I want to copy the format from. And it changes the format. So it's just blank, it's clean. I just prefer working that way. So this is my target population. This is the N, which is the numbers. Great. And then I want to come up with my sample too. So I'm going to match up. I'm going to put it over here for now. My N. And so in arts, I've got 29. Just got to be a little bit careful. If you just copy and paste this, because some of it might be in different order. And then Ted Rogers, we've got 209. And then the Creative School, we've got 43. And Community Services, 20. Engineering, 38. Science, 19. And total, we'll just double check. It's always good to kind of do it a few different ways to make sure you're not missing anything. 358, 358. It's great. Okay, so that's how we're going to do that. Now we need to, so we can see the numbers, but it's quite hard to compare those raw numbers, right? We need to really turn this into a percentage. So this is how we're going to turn it into a percentage. Get a bit bigger. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to add percentage up here. And here's the formula. It's equals this divided by, or backslash, the total. And if I hit enter, it shows me that 13% of these guys, of the population are in arts. I can then format it to a percentage by clicking this button here. And I want 1 decimal point, so I'm just going to increase that there. And then you can actually copy formulas, which is really useful. So I'm just going to show you if you just copy it, you're going to make a mistake. So here you go. So if I copy this and put it down, I get an error. And the reason I get an error is that I'm asking Excel to copy this formula and I'm pasting it 1 cell down, so it moves the formula 1 cell down too. And of course, I want this one to move because I want it to draw from that number, but I want it to divide by this number here. So every time I want it to be, in my case, row 9. You might have it slightly different number. Don't worry if it's not row 9, but you've got to figure out what your total, what row is your total number in. So this is how we're going to fix that. So I'm just going to delete that for now. If I come back to my original formula, I can put a $sign in front of either a row number or a column letter, and that will tell Excel that I want it to fix on that particular thing. Don't change it when I paste it. Keep it where it was. So I want to keep 9, right? Because every time I move it down, I want 9 to stay the same. I don't want it to move. So I can just come put my cursor before the number 9, and I can just put a $sign. All right, so it should look like that. Hit enter, it doesn't change this. But what I can do then is I can drag this down and it copies that formula down. And because I've told it don't move number 9, it doesn't move number 9. It stays there, so it calculates correctly each time. Because I've not fixed the columns, if I'd have put a dollar sign before the H, it would fix the column, and if I pasted it this way or that way, it would stick to H9 every time. But I don't want to do that. I can actually just not have that dollar sign in front of H, and I can just paste it over here, and now it shifts in the right way. Okay, so just a simple way to get that number quickly. So now I can see that I've got, what's the challenge here? Well, my challenge is, obviously, I kind of knew this would happen, is that I have an overrepresentation of Ted Rogers students. 29% of my population are Ted Rogers, but 58% of my sample are Ted Rogers, so it's almost twice as many. And so I'm underrepresented in a lot of these, especially community services. I've not got many of those guys in comparison. And science, I haven't got a lot of either, okay? But I've got some, but it's just not perfect. And this is important because we need to be transparent and honest about the quality of our data, right? This is a result of our relatively weak sampling frame and sampling strategies, right? So that's something to think about. We had to do what we could do within the time constraints and resource constraints of our class. So we had to do, we couldn't use a perfect sampling frame and a perfect sampling strategy. So this is what we have instead. So you've got to use this to critique and inform yourself about, and the reader about what's a problem with the study. Okay, so just a couple of formatting things. We're going to turn this into Times New Roman. Going to be 12-point font. I want this to be merged, right? So it covers both of those columns. So I can highlight this and I can go to merge and center. And then I'm going to format painter, and I'm going to do the same over here. Great. I want these numbers to be with a comma. So actually, instead of just going in and typing a comma, I can come up here and I can format it to be comma style. It automatically gives me these decimal points, but I'm just going to delete those or decrease them. Great. And I want my other numbers to be in the same style. It's not going to change commas, but it just makes it exactly the same. Okay. Then I want border lines on horizontal, major horizontal only. So no vertical lines, only the major horizontal ones. So I'm going to put one here. So I'm going to click bottom border here, and it gives me that black line there, and I want one above the total line as well, just to signify that. And because I got the space here, it just shows that little gap and the difference. That's great. I'm going to, let's just do it. So then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my Word document. Okay, so sample compared with target population. This is where you're going to write a little bit. And then the table one goes here. So I'm just going to delete this. Whoops. I'm going to paste. And there's my table. You can see it's just a little bit off somehow. It's not quite right. So I'm just going to hover over here, and you see this little square pop up. I'm going to left click that so it highlights the whole table. And I'm going to come to table layout, and then auto fit and auto fit contents. And it just kind of like makes it fit. Looks good. I'm going to put these in the center because they're a little bit off over there. So I can come over here. And there we go. There's my table. So I've got the results. I've got my title. The title of the table always goes at the top of the table. And then here you're going to write a couple of sentences. And so what's the key point? Well, I think the key point is that we're overrepresented in Ted Rogers and underrepresented in some others. So I would give a couple of sentences that explains that. You don't need to repeat every single statistic in here. That's not the point. You're just trying to interpret what the main points are for the reader. All right? Okay, number one, done. All right, so the next thing is we need to create a pie chart that shows the proportion of students or respondents that spend their free time in the downtown Young neighborhood. So if we go to the survey real quick, sometimes where the survey comes in handy, we are looking for the question that's like, this one. I spend time in the downtown neighborhood on these, in these categories. This is what we're going to look at. So let's come to our data. We're going to create a new pivot table. So we're going to come to full data, highlight, insert pivot table. Okay, and then we're looking for that question. So you could either search for it if you remember a phrase from the question, or I can just find it here. How often? There we go. So I'm going to just click and drag that into rows, and click and drag that into values. Great. And there's my table, right? So we are going to copy the data from this. And I'll just show you, so don't do this, but if you copy the whole pivot table and you paste it, you get that pivot table, you get another pivot table that comes with all the functionality of that pivot table. Now, pivot tables are great for kind of summarizing the data, but I find them a bit clunky for formatting, right? Creating a well-formatted table or chart. So I'm going to undo that. And now I'm just going to highlight the data that I want to copy. So if I just highlight a copy part of the pivot table, and for the pie chart, that's all I need, is those numbers here. Then I can paste those next door, and it just gives me the data, the values, and it's just a bit easier to format and so on. Okay, so that's my data, that's the numbers I need for my pie chart. Great. So now I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to go to Insert, Pie Charts over here, and then just a 2D pie chart. And there's a pie chart. Pretty straightforward. But we're going to format this to make it look a certain way. So first of all, we're going to get rid of the chart table. Just delete it. We're going to get rid of this legend too. And we're actually going to right click on the pie chart, and we're going to do add data labels. And it shows you then, here are the data labels. It's showing you the numbers of people that have responded to each of those items. But we need to change this, right? Because we need to know what those data, what the category is. And we're also going to turn it into a percentage as well. So I'm going to left click on it, one of the data labels, so I can see that all of them are highlighted. If you left click again, you just get one highlighted, and we don't want to just format one, we want to format them all, okay? But I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click on Format Data Labels. And you should get some kind of pop-up that looks a bit like this. If you're on a Mac, it might look a little bit different, but it should be something like this. And so I'm going to select category name, so that gives me the title of the item that it is. I'm going to unselect value because I don't want to know how many people responded to that one, but I do want to know the percentage. I'm also going to deselect the leader lines. So what leader lines are, maybe I'll just show you this. If this moves out too far away, it gives you this line. I don't want that line. We're just going to unselect that, okay? We're also going to choose outside end. So right now, Excel is assuming where the best place is. So it's putting this one here because it's too big to put inside, but these fit inside, so it puts them inside. And I don't really like that. I like them all to be consistent. So I'm going to just say outside end every time. Oh, but I've only selected that one. Do you see? So it's only changed that one. So let's select them all again. Come back over here and outside end. There we go. Great. So it should look something a bit like this. While we're here, I want to turn these percentages into one decimal point. I need a decimal point. So while they're all still highlighted, I'm going to click on number. And I'm going to click on percentage. And instead of 2 decimal places, you see it's just giving me 2 decimal places. I just want 1. And hit enter. There we go. I also want these to be Times New Roman 12-point font. So come over here. Great. And so what else do we need to do? Well, you can see that this is still overlapping a little bit. So I'm going to just play around with it a little bit to make sure that it fits. So there's 2 things I could do. I could left click on this twice so that it only selects this one, and I can move it around a little bit. You can also select the pie chart in the middle. I mean, you could actually just reduce the size of the pie chart within the chart area. And that's another way to do it. So whatever you think makes it look the best. Could make that a bit longer 2, so it goes on to 1, you know, so you can play around with it a little bit like this. And then the last thing, you see that it's got this gray line around the border, and we're going to get rid of that. So we can left click, so it highlights the area, and you come over here to chart options, and under the paint can border, and then no line. And there we go. And so now we can just copy this. So Control C, and then come back to the Word document. And so here is where you're going to write a few sentences. And then this is where your pie chart goes. So we're going to get rid of that yellow text and replace it with the pie chart. A couple of things to note here. For some reason, Office has different kind of formats for Excel and Word. I don't really know why. You'll notice that when I pasted this, the colors are different. Now, it doesn't really matter as long as the colors are relatively straightforward and not like offensive or anything. But whenever you paste, you always get this little, immediately afterwards, if I click a button, it will go away, but immediately afterwards I get this little control paste options. So I can come over here, and then I can either keep the destination theme, so the destination is where I'm pasting it, or I could keep the source theme, and that's where it comes from. So just to let you know, you can do that. The other thing, as long as you keep it consistent all the way through your paper, I don't really care. And then the other thing is that for a chart is a figure, and for figures, the title goes underneath. So for a table, the title goes on the top, and table 1 is table 1, and table 2 is table 2, and then here, figure. So this is the first figure, so this is figure 1, it goes underneath. One last thing about charts, I'll just show you. So let's say you're creating another pie chart for your final project, and let's just make something up. So let's just say, maybe yes, no, maybe, and maybe you have these numbers. We'll just make it up, and let's make a pie chart. Insert and pie chart. So if you want to keep it the same format, instead of having to go through all of that stuff again, you can actually copy the formats of a chart, and it works for column charts too, bar charts. So you click on the one that you want to copy, you copy it, you click on the one you want to transfer those formats to, you right click, and you click Paste Special. And then you can just select Formats. And then it copies all of those formats. So it puts the the same data labels, the same border or no border or whatever it is. So that's just a bit of a shortcut to make sure all of your charts are consistent. Great. All right, let's see what's next. All right, so next, we're going to look at the target market versus the others. So what does this mean? It means we are going to split up our respondents, 370 whatever, and we're going to try and identify around 20% of them, 25%, who are most open to the things that our client wants to do. So our client wants to get students to go to their events and spend time at their events. So we need to find the people that are most open to spending time at their events. And we're going to look at them and compare them to the others and see how are they similar, and perhaps more importantly, how are they different. So the first thing you need to do is to explain what that target market means. So, a target market can be understood as, so I want you to go and find some kind of explanation or understanding of what target market means. And it's basically something along the lines of, the group of people that are going to be most open to converting to consume or experience the product or service or experience that you're trying to offer. And then you're going to need to explain how we have put that into practice. How have we operationalized target market? And so we're going to go through that now, and I'm going to kind of think out loud as we do it. And just briefly explain why that's useful. Why is it useful to come up with a target market? It's basically so we can be efficient with our resources. So we're not going to be marketing to every single TMU student. We're going to try and figure out, well, which are the ones that are most open to going to an event by the BIA, and how can we reach them? So let's have a look. Let's go to the survey so we can see the questions. And I got a sense of what I'm going to look for. It is to do with the different events, right? So we asked them about 8 or 9 events or so. Yeah, these ones. And we ask people, I would like to attend this event in the future. And so I think using this question for the different events is going to help us identify people that are open to going to these events, right? We're going to use the basis of trying to put people into our target market really explicitly on, do they want to do things that the BIA wants them to do, right? So we're not going to assume that international students are the best thing to do or best target market, or that students in their first year, or we're not going to assume that our respondents based on demographic categories are the best. The most likely people that will be engaged by the BIA are the people that say, I want to do things that the BIA has to offer, right? So that's going to be the criteria of how we're going to figure this out. So let's go to our data, and we are going to need to create a new category. So let's come to our data and let's find that list of the events. So it is, there we go. It starts in column AG. Let's just check I've got these in the right order. Yeah, so I've got these ordered by respondent, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in column AG, I've got my first, that's where the event questions start. And remember, for each event, we've got 3 questions. We've got, have you heard about it? Have you been to it? And would you like to go? Now, the BIA would be interested in, have you been to it? But if we're trying to say this is the target market, it doesn't really matter whether you've been to it or not. It really matters whether you want to go to it or not. So we're going to use this question here. And you'll see then that every third column is about, I would like to attend for the different events. So just to make it easy on myself, I'm going to highlight all of these columns that are about, I would like to attend. So I'm just going to highlight this, left click, and then I'm going to hold Control. I think on a Mac you press Command, and then I'm going to click every third column. Right, so it's the last one for each of these events. And I know that the third column for each of the events is about, I would like to attend. Okay. It's going to go all the way to animated laneways. There we go. And then I'm just going to highlight these, put these as a color so I can see them quite easily. Okay. Then I'm going to right click in column BQ next to the last event question. And I'm going to just put insert. And this gives me a clear column. It looks like there's text, but it's actually just the text following in from this item. This is actually blank. You can see it's blank up here. So I'm going to call this target market score. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to add up each individual's responses to this, would you like to attend? Because we know that 4 is I would really like to attend, and 3 is I would like to attend, and 2 is not so much, and 1 is no. So the higher the score, the more interested they are in attending all of these events. So it's going to be quite straightforward. I'm just going to click equals here. So I'm going to start to build a formula, and I'm going to go back to the first one. Okay, so I'm going to start with spring into whatever it is. So I'm going to click that, so it's showing up here, and then plus skate, so it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I just lost that one, do you see? So you just got to be careful. So I'm just going to go back and make sure I add it on. So this one, yeah, okay. Plus, and this one, and the final one there. I'm just going to hit that. So I've got a score of 29. I'm just going to recheck, make sure I've got them all added up. So I'm looking that the red ones have all been included in this formula. Yeah, looking good. Yeah, okay. So just to be clear, for the very first person, you should have a score of 29, which is respondent number 1. So just make sure for respondent number 1, you got a score of 29, okay? Now, we don't need to go and do that for every single person. We don't have to go through that. We can just copy and paste this formula. So the easiest way is you just highlight this, you come into the bottom right-hand corner of the cell there, and you get this little black plus sign, and you double click, and it copies it all the way down. Great. We're then going to, because I don't like to leave formulas in the data, they just make it a bit more clunky. So I'm going to right click and I'm just going to copy that column, and then I'm going to right click back and I'm going to paste values. So instead of pasting the formula, it just pastes the number that's in there. Great. So now everybody's got a score. And so the higher the score, the more likely they are to want to attend more of the events. And the lower the score, the less likely they are to want to attend the events. So I'm just going to try and find the top 20 to 25% so that I can call those target market and everyone else not. So simplest way to do that is I'm just going to come to my filter, and I'm going to sort from largest to smallest. So these are the people with the highest scores, right? Oh, and then just by mistake I got to the bottom. Those are the people with the lowest scores. I've got 364 people, and so let's just figure out what 20% of 364 is. Well, you could use Excel itself to do it, but I'm just going to use a calculator really quick. So I'll do 364 times 0.2. That's give me 20%. So we've got about 72. So between 70 and 75, I'm really looking for that cutoff. So if I come here, and so because we've got the highest at the top, so I'm going to scroll down to around 75, and I'm looking for a cutoff. And so here, I think that's the cutoff. So we're going to say people that have a score of 36 or higher are in the target market, and people that have a score of 35 or lower are not in the target market. And this is how we're going to add that. We're going to do it. So I'm going to add another column. So I'm going to right click in this column here, and I'm going to go insert. I'm going to call this, instead of target market score, just target market. And people that are in my target market, I'm going to give them the number 1. So it's everybody with 36. Oh, I didn't copy that, did I? Let's try it again. So copy that 1. Everybody that's got 36 down to row 82. And then everybody else is going to have a 0 because they are not in my target market. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure everybody there's got a 0. Perfect. Okay, so now I've created my target market. Now, for your final report, you could play around with this. You don't have to use this exact target market. You could add different things. You could say, well, let's just look at the events in the fall, right? And we're going to make a fall target market. You could add another category, right? Do you spend time in the downtown young neighborhood? Maybe we need to add people that currently spend time. If you don't spend any time here, maybe that's not a good target market. Maybe you're not part of it, right? So we're going to use this for this assignment, but as you go through your final paper, I want you to think about how could I improve this or change this or tweak this based on the client's need and so on. Okay, so let's create a new pivot table. So highlight it and insert a pivot table. I'm going to go to a new worksheet. Great. And so now we're just looking to find some characteristics between the target and compare the target market to the others. So the first thing we're going to do is actually what should we do? Let's just do a couple of the main characteristics. So let's find the target market. So we're looking for that target market. I'm just going to go over here and search for it. Oh, and it's not shown up. Okay, if you add a new column to your data, sometimes Excel doesn't pick it up straight away. So we've got to do one of two things. You've got to refresh it. So you can either click on your pivot table here and click refresh at the top, or right click and click refresh here. And hopefully, there we go, great. So we're going to have target market, and we're going to put target market in our columns. Great. And now we're going to compare target market to to others on a couple of things. So let's look at, let's do international students. Okay, so I'm going to put international students into my rows and into my values. There we go. We've got our pivot table starting to build up. So let's have a quick look. So we've got 364 responses. 262 are not international students. 100 are international students. We've got 2 preferred not to answer. Okay, and we've got 81 in our target market, 1 and 283 not in our target market. Okay, so let's just tidy this up. We're going to use the filters on the pivot table. We're going to get rid of the blanks there. And I'm also going to get rid of the prefer not to say, just because there's only 2 of them and it just makes it a bit more, it's just not necessary to include. It's just the value of including them is going to be lost by the complications of including them. So we're just going to get rid of those. Great. So we'll just bring it down to 362 responses. Now, we need to interpret this. And right now, it's a bit tricky to interpret, right? It's hard to say, to kind of figure out any trends from this just with the N, just with the numbers. So we can turn this into percentages. So we can right click and we can show values as, well, let's just show you a couple of things. If I go to percentage of grand total, this shows me that 100% total, and then of all of the total, this is how many are in each of these different cells, right? So if everybody that we surveyed that meet these criteria, 6.6% of them were international students, yes, and they're in our target market. Okay, it's interesting, but still doesn't really help us compare and contrast. So let's just try. Let's see. I'm going to try row total. Is this going to be good? Okay, this is one thing. This is saying that of everybody who is a domestic student, 21% of domestic students are in the target market, but 24% of international students are in our target market. Okay, so that's actually showing a bit of a difference, okay? I think maybe it's actually going to be easier still if we, maybe percentage of column total. And so what this is showing us is that of our target market, 30% are international, but of everybody else, only 27% is international. So it's a difference. We can see that our target market has a higher representation of international students. So perhaps there's a small kind of difference, and we could say that maybe international students are more likely to be part of this target market. So that's kind of the thing that we can begin to get to. So let's start to use this information to build the table that we're going to put into our report. So I'm just going to type over here. I'm just going to put target market as first, because we're always going to look at the target market first, even though the pivot table is the other way around. So we've got to be careful. We're always going to switch around. Target market comes first and others. And then we're going to say international students. And so we've just got to find the right number. So the percentage of our target market that are international students is, well, there's our target market. There's our international students. So it's 30%. And then of others, it's 26.95. So that's showing us some difference. Okay, so let's do the same thing, but on a different category now. So we can copy this pivot table, right? So we can copy the whole thing and paste it below, and we get that pivot table. But now instead of, are you an international student? Let's try faculty, okay? So let's come over here. And so because we know that we've got so many in our Ted Rogers, I think we're going to look at people that are in Ted Rogers versus that are not. So it's really this number here. So we're going to try and recreate the same information. So we want this to be percentage of columns. So we're going to come over here, show values as percentage of column. And there we go. So of our sample, 57% are in Ted Rogers overall. But our target market is actually 73% Ted Rogers. That's interesting, right? So that's showing us that our target market has a much higher proportion of Ted Rogers students than the overall sample. So it's not saying, we've got to be cautious, right? Because we already know that more than half of our sample is Ted Rogers. So even if this number was 57.4%, then there would be no difference in whether, Ted Rogers students wouldn't be any more likely or less likely to be in the target market, because it would be the same proportions as the overall sample. But because it's different than the overall sample, that's kind of curious, right? It's showing us that there's some potential there. So let's do it like this. I'm going to be Ted Rogers student. Okay, and we're just looking for that same number. So in the target market is 72.84. I'll just copy it this time. And these guys is 53. Okay. So this is telling us that our target market has a higher proportion of international students than the others, and a higher proportion of the Ted Rogers students than others. So it's beginning to, we could say if you want to, the Ted Rogers would actually be quite an interesting place to market. These seem to be, respondents from this group seem to be more engaged, interested in visiting your attractions, in your events than the others. Okay, good. Now let's do a couple of, let's do the communications questions. Where do you get your information from? So I'm just going to copy this one again too. I'm going to just build this up. I'm going to paste this down here. We're going to get rid of the international student question here. And let's look for, it was the TikTok and the all that kind of stuff. There we go. Okay, so let's just we'll do 3 for now, okay? But for your group project, you should be doing all of these. So let's do TikTok. We'll just do the first. Well, let's see. We'll do TikTok. Actually, we're going to copy that into values. Okay. And let's do Facebook. And then let's do, why don't we do student organizations, okay? So we've got TikTok, Facebook, and student organizations. I want you to click on values here and drag this into rows. Okay, so that's what your pivot table should look like. And then here, that's where we get the information. Now let's make sense of this because it's a bit confusing. So what do these numbers mean? 1253, 294, like it doesn't quite make sense. Why? That's kind of an odd thing to do there. So we've got to go back and think about what's the data that we actually collected from this. So if we look at the survey, I'm just going to search for it, TikTok, there we go. So we asked people to rate this on a scale of 1 to 5. So this is a ratio level question. International students is not ratio level, right? It's either yes or no. Domestic, international. This is ratio level. So everybody's got a response that's either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If we look at this pivot table, what this is actually doing is it's summing those numbers. So for example, if we go to the data, you don't need to do this in your own file, but just think about it, right? If we look at that TikTok, where is it? Column BZ. Okay, so just to show you. So what it's doing is it's actually summing up all of these numbers. So it's summing up 3 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4 and so on. It's summing them up. Now we don't want to sum them. We don't want to add them up cumulatively like that. What do we actually want to do? Well, we want to change that. We don't want to, let's see what the options are. We can count them, but if we count them, it's just going to be counting the number of people, right? So let's try it. I'll show you what it looks like. If we count them, okay, we get 364. But again, that doesn't really tell us what's something that's useful. What we actually want to do is we want to show the average score. Okay, so we're going to right click on each of these items and we're going to click average. So look, when we turn this to average, we can see that actually it's 3.4 out of 5. So that's actually telling us something, right? It's telling us the average score out of 5. And so the higher the average, the more likely it is that different groups are going to be using this tool to find information. So let's turn these other two into averages 2. Summarize values by, so right click, summarize values by average. And then right click, summarize values by average. Great. Let's turn these all into just 1 decimal point, so it's just a little bit easier to see. Whoops. Okay. And so we can see a little bit of information here. So we can see that overall, on these 3 items, TikTok is the most useful, or the one that people rated the highest. Student organizations is the second, and Facebook is the least. But when we compare the 2 different groups, it's kind of interesting, right? We can see that of our target market, they are more likely to use all of the different sources, so they're rating them higher, so they're perhaps engaged in more ways of finding information. And look at Facebook. Facebook is the lowest, but it's quite a lot higher than the others, people that are not in the target market. So it's kind of interesting. So that's it. So we're going to take our items. So we've got TikTok, Facebook, and student organizations. I'm going to go back to this table that we started to create. Oh, it's just gone a bit funky with the column size, isn't it? Let's do this. Why has it done that? I think the pivot tables just make it a bit odd sometimes. So I'm just going to highlight everything and drag, and there we go. And I'll make it a bit bigger. Okay, so we've got TikTok, Facebook, and student organizations. So TikTok, Facebook, student organizations. And actually, let's just add a like a subtitle to that. So it's ignore that. Let's just borrow the question actually. So I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to say find information. I always find information and ideas on what to do in my free time. There we go. And then that should actually be student organization, should be in the bottom one here. Get rid of that extra space. Okay. And then we're just going to add the numbers. So this is our target market. There we go. And then this is our others. Great. Done. So that's the beginnings of the table that we need to do. So let's just go back and double check what I'm actually asking you to do. So you need to give me a table that compares target market to others on those key things. Okay. Do you know what? Let's add. We're going to add 2 more to here. I'm not going to do them right now, but I want you to show me that you can do them. So let's do. The Downtown Young BIA and my own friends and family. My own friends, okay? So there's still some, so you need to go through and change these to summarize values as average and summarize values as average, and then add them over here, right? So Downtown Young BIA and my own friends. And I want you to add the numbers, figure them out, and add, what are these numbers? Okay, so I'm just going to put question marks for now, but that's your challenge, all right? Find out what those numbers are. And then we're just going to turn this into a table. So we're going to make this Times New Roman. 12, great. We want everything to 1 decimal point, which it is. Just going to make this a bit tidier like that. Great. And then we want those, we want the bottom line. And yeah, maybe we'll do it like, let's think about this. We could just turn it into an italic maybe. There we go. Okay. And then we'll put these all in the center. I think that makes more sense. Great. So that's the basis of your table. Okay. So before we paste this into our report, we just need to, we're going to go over statistical analysis. Okay. Statistical testing. And this relates to this part of the rubric. I'll just show you really quick to make sure you understand. It's this one here, okay? T-test and chi-square. So the point of this is, well, let's look at this. We can see that, for example, in our target market, 30% of them are international students, whereas in others, it's not, it's less. So we can see there's a difference. our target market is going to have a few more international students in it than people that are not in our target market, the group that's not in our target market. Likewise, we can see that in our target market, it seems much more likely that there is a higher proportion of our Ted Rogers students in there than in the other group, which might suggest that our target market, if you were to market to Ted Rogers students, you might find more people that are open to attending BIA events than if you just marketed to other students, right? That's kind of where this is heading. Likewise, we can see here that our target market seem to be more likely to be using Facebook than others, and more likely to be using student organizations and so on, right? But the question here is, so if we look at this difference, there's a difference of 0.2. That's a difference. But are we confident enough, or how confident are we that that difference is meaningful enough that it really captures something that's going on in the rest of the target population? Like, is that difference big enough that we could feel confident enough to say to Susie, hey, you really should be marketing on TikTok, because the people that care about going to your events, they are more likely to be on TikTok looking for information than other people. They're more likely to be on Facebook looking for information than other people. They're more likely to be international students. They're more likely to be Ted Rogers students. We can see that, yes, they are more likely, but how confident are we that that's a real difference going on in the target population in the wider world? This difference is only 3%, but this difference is closer to 20%. So can we be more confident in this point that there's going to be more Ted Rogers students? And how do we measure that confidence? And so this is where the statistical tests come in handy, because they give us a measure to show how confident we can be in the differences of our results. So here's a couple of things you need to think about. When we're doing our stats tests, we're thinking about two types of variables. We're talking about the independent variable and the dependent variable. And so the independent variable is the thing that doesn't change, right? It's the thing that affects the dependent variable. So in our case, in this situation, the independent variable is whether you are in the target market or you're not in the target market. Whether you are showing interest in attending events or you're showing less interest in attending events, right? And then we're curious to see, well, does being part one of these groups affect whether you are going to be using TikTok to find information, or whether you're going to be in a Ted Rogers student more or not, right? So our independent variable in this case is going to be whether you're in the target market, yes or no, which is more interested in events, less interested in events. And then how does that affect some of these other things? Is there changes in those things? So to do that, we're going to do some stats tests, some statistical tests. And our stats tests are going to produce a p-value, a probability value. And a probability value is going to be a number that ranges between 0 and 1. Our p-value is going to be in between those two numbers. And you don't need to worry about this too much, but this is the process, okay, or the philosophy behind it, or the practice behind it. And we basically start with a null hypothesis, and that basically is a statement that suggests there is no effect between which group of the independent variable you're in and whether you are likely to use something or not and have an effect on the dependent variable. So in this case, let's look at TikTok. Do you use TikTok for looking for information on events? That's our dependent variable, and we're interested to see, does being in the target market or not, does having interest in attending events or not have an effect on whether you use TikTok for information or not? If we run this through our test and we get a higher p-value, closer to 1, then we would be more confident that our null hypothesis is going to be true, that there is no impact or limited impact, a difference between target market and others and whether they use TikTok or not. But the lower our p-value, then the more confident we can be that the null hypothesis is false, that it's wrong. And so the lower the p-value, the more confident we can be to say that there is a difference between people that are in the target market and not, and how they use TikTok. there's this kind of magic, arbitrary, accepted level of 0.05. If our p-value is less than 0.05, then we can call it statistically significant. And that means that we can be more confident. We're kind of at least 95% confident, right? Because there's 95% that there is a difference. That if we were to redo this survey with a different sample of the same target population, we would be more confident that there would be those same differences showing up in our results. They might be slightly different numbers, but we would still see that one group is using it higher than the other. That's basically what we're trying to show, is how confident are we that the differences that we find in our results would play out and be replicated in other parts of the target population. And so we're looking for that low p-value of less than 0.05. And that shows that we're at least 95% confident that the null hypothesis is wrong, and that there's a really strong chance that it's wrong. And that we're more confident that the independent variable, being in the target market, yes or no, does have an effect on the dependent variable, whether you're using TikTok for information or not. And so there are two tests that we're going to use. And this really depends on the type of data that we're using. So to keep things relatively straightforward, we are only going to look at independent variables that have two groups within them. So we're only going to look at, for example, target market, yes or no. Or for your final report, you could group respondents into two groups based on maybe age, young and old, maybe based on people that travel a short amount of distance or long amount of distance, or are in Ted Rogers or not, but that have two groups, okay? Then, to figure out what tests we need, we've got to look at the dependent variable and what type of data it is. If our dependent variable is a ratio level data on a scale of 1 to 5, for example, then we're going to do a t-test. If our dependent variable has categories, and we're going to keep it simple and we're only going to look at two categories, then we're going to use a chi-square. All right, so we're going to come back to this to figure this out. So let's go back to our data and look at our results and try and figure this out. So let's start with, we're actually going to start with these numbers here. Let's look at TikTok. We've started with TikTok. Let's look at it. So first of all, we've got to figure out, well, here's our independent variable, target market and others, two groups. And then this is our dependent variable. What type of data is this? Is this ratio or is it categorical? It's ratio, right? And so we're going to use a t-test to figure out the results from this. This is how we're going to do it. So we're actually going to go back to our data. Actually, I'm going to label these. I don't like having just random name sheets. We're going to call this pie chart for time spent. Whatever you want, just call it something so it doesn't get confusing. And then this is going to be target market versus others. That's what I'll call it. Okay, so let's go back to our full data. And then the first thing we need to do is we need to order the data by target market and others. So I'm just going to look for the target market. It is, okay, so we want the target market. And I've already got this ordered by largest to smallest, okay? So we've got 1 at the top. So those are people in our target market, down to row 82, and then everybody else is not. And then just to keep this simple, I'm going to color my target market. I'm just going to color those cells, whatever color, just something. So let's color them green. Okay, great. So I've got target market at the top, others at the bottom. And then I need to find the item where that I'm going to test. So I'm looking for TikTok. So let's find TikTok. Oh, I've got to change that. Okay, so that's in column BZ. All right, TikTok. To do the t-test, this is where you're going to come. So we've got BZ, but that's the right column. And then we're going to come to data over here. And then we're going to look for this data analysis. Now, you might not see that data analysis. So that's where you have to come to this link on here. And it's the Excel analysis toolpack instruction. So you open that link and it should bring you to this website. I mean, you just follow the instructions. If you're using Windows, you follow these instructions. If you're using Mac, you follow these instructions, okay? So just follow those instructions. It's really straightforward, and it's just going to reveal to you that button. So once you see data analysis, you're good to go. So then we're going to click on data analysis, and we're going to look for that t-test 2 sample assuming equal variances. Don't need to worry about what it means. That's what it is. Okay, t-test 2 sample assuming equal variances, and we're going to click OK. Now it's going to ask us to input the range for variable 1. So variable 1 is going to be our target market, and we know it's in column BZ because that's the TikTok. So I'm just going to click on this arrow here, and then I'm going to left click and select all the way down. So I include all the numbers for this question for people that are in my target market. Okay, there we go. So it's covering that range, and I'll just click that again. And then variable 2, well, it's everybody else. So I'm going to make sure I'm in BZ. I'm going to start from the very first person that's not in my target market, and I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom. Great. I'm going to leave everything else as it is, and I'm just going to click OK. And I get this new worksheet opened. I'm going to call this TikTok. Okay. And here are my results. Let's try and make some sense of them. So my variable 1 is my target market, and these guys are the others. Okay, just going to call them that. Just, you don't have to do this, just to make it a bit clear. The mean score is that results. So we've got 3.6 and 3.4. So if I come back over here, I'll just show you 3.6 and 3.4, right? That's where it comes from. It's actually exactly the same number, I hope, 3.38869. Let's see, 3.38869, right? So it's exactly the same numbers. Observation is the number of people in those groups. We've got 81 people and 283 people. And then the one that we're actually looking for is this T2tail. This one. That is our p-value. That tells us the result. So we've got a p-value of 0.159. Let's come back over here. And we can come back to this slide up here. Oops. So 0.159. So we're somewhere around here. So we can see that there's a difference between our target market and others. And it's getting close to 0. So we have some confidence that there's a difference between our target market and our others. But it does not meet the threshold of less than 0.05. So we cannot claim this to be significant. This is not a significant result. We could not use this result as the basis for a recommendation to say you would find more of your target market on TikTok than people that are not on your target market. Now, it's not to say you shouldn't use TikTok, but it's to say that you will equally be reaching your target market and your others. It's not going to be a special place where there are more of your target market than others. That's how we can use this. So let's go back to our table. We're going to copy this number. We're going to come back over here, and we're going to add p-value over here. Okay? And so TikTok, our p-value is, did it not copy properly? No, let me go back for it. Okay. And we are going to report this to 3 decimal points. So it's actually going to round it up to 0.6. Okay. Needs to be 3 decimal points. Let's use this. There we go. Great. And so what this is telling me is that yes, there is a difference, but it's not a big enough difference that we're confident enough that it's going to be different between the 2 groups if we go to the wider target population. All right? So We should still be looking at the ones that are highest, because the ones that are highest that our target market is using are still going to be useful to use, but it's not going to over-represent our target market if we focus on TikTok. It's going to get many other people too. That's the point. So I'm going to do Facebook, and then I'm going to leave you to figure out the bottom three. Okay, so you're going to figure out the bottom three on your own. So let's do Facebook. So we're going to come back to the data. We are going to look for Facebook. So that's TikTok. Where is it? Twitter, Facebook, CB, so column CB. So I'm going to come back to data and data analysis. And I'm still on t-test 2 sample, assuming equal variance. And so there's a couple of ways I could do this. I could just redo exactly what I did and delete that and then click and drag. Or I know that that's BZ and I want to go to CB. So I could just change BZ here to CB and CB and CB and CB. Because I know the rows aren't going to change, right? Because the target market is still going to be fixed. When I click OK, I get my new sheet. Let's bring it over here. I'll call this one Facebook. I'm going to make it nice and big so you can see it. Let's just double check the results. So we've got target market and others. We've got the mean is 2.38 and 1.78. Let's just double check. So 2.38 and 1.78. So we got the right numbers. We've got 81 people and 283 people. That's great. And then we're looking for the p-value here. Okay. All right. Oh, what's going on here? That's a bit of a funky number. What does that mean? Well, it's just Excel trying to help us, but it's not helping us at all. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to format this cell. So if you get a p-value that looks like this, and with an E in it, and it just doesn't make sense, this is what you need to do. You're going to right click on the cell, and you're going to go to Format Cells here. Then you're going to click on Number, and then we want it with 3 decimal points, and you click OK. And that's our p-value. And so, I mean, this is interesting, right? The p-value is 0. And so it's Excel, because it's such a small number, it's actually Excel trying to just explain to us how small it is, but we don't want its explanation, we actually just want to see how small it is. If I just increase these decimal points, let's see how small it is. Look at that, okay. So it's 0.000001. So if we come over here, we can see that it's just a little bit above nothing, right? So this is telling us that this result really is statistically significant, that there is a big difference between our target market and our others on this particular result. That our target market are significantly more likely to be using Facebook to find information than others. It's still relatively low, it's still only 2.4, so they're still using TikTok more, but they're using Facebook more than others, right? So it's just, we've got to be, maybe we don't want to suggest that they use Facebook because it's still relatively low, but if they were to use Facebook, they're more likely to find their target market than other people, all right? So how do we report this? Let's come back over here. Let's take that back to 3 numbers. Okay, so if that's the number, there's a few different ways a few different things we need to figure out. So if the p-value is greater than 0.05, you report it with 3 decimal points, which is what we did here. That is bigger than 0.05, so we report it with 3 decimal points. If the p-value is less than 0.05, report it as less than 0.05, okay? But if the p-value is less than 0.1, and you report it as 0.01, and if the p-value is less than 0.001, you report that. So let's go back to our number here, Facebook. What is it? Is that less than? Which one of these is it? Is it greater than 0.5? No, it's smaller. Is it smaller than 0.5? Yes. But it's also smaller than 0.01? Yes. Is it also smaller than 0.001? Yes. So we report this as 0.001, less than 0.001. And that just shows us the level of confidence that we have that these two numbers are different. Okay? So that's how you do your t-tests. So we're going to have to make sure they're the same format. So Times New Roman, 12, and we're going to make sure they're all aligned. Great. And that should be the same format as that. So I'm just going to borrow the format paintbrush. There we go. Okay. So that's how we do ratio level data. T-tests, perfect. What about international students? So let's imagine we need to do a test to see if international students, if they're statistically more likely to be in our target market than others. So this is how we're going to do it. So let's just double check. So our independent variable has got two groups, target market yes and no. And then our dependent variable is international students and domestic students. International student yes, international student no. And that is a categorical dependent variable, right? Two groups. And so we need to do a chi-square test, not a t-test, a chi-square test. But a chi-square test, we have to do it differently, but it's still going to give us a p-value that we can interpret in the same way. So how do we get there? Okay, well, we can do a chi-square. So here's an example of our So here's a simple example of a chi-square just to understand what it's actually going to do. So let's imagine we've done a survey and we've surveyed 100 people. And of those 100 people, 50 are old and 50 are young. And also of those 100 people, 50 prefer chocolate ice cream and 50 prefer strawberry ice cream. If there was no relationship between age and preference of ice cream, what would you expect these numbers to show? These four numbers that I've highlighted here. So if the null hypothesis was true, that there was no relationship, what would you expect to see here? Well, you would expect to see 25 and 25 and 25 and 25. Whoops. Right? That there's no relationship between the two. But let's imagine we actually did the survey. And what we actually observed wasn't quite like that. Maybe we saw 35 and 15. And here we saw 15 and 35. So what we observed is not what we would expect, is not what we expected if the null hypothesis was true. And so what a chi-square does is it compares the differences between these two tables, between what we would expect and what we actually saw, and then tells us how likely it is that this is by chance, and basically produces a p-value that we can use to report on. And this is how we get the p-value from a chi-square. So it's just a formula. We do equals, and then it's chi-square test, so this one here. And then it tells you when the actual range, see, so this is the actual range. So we don't include the totals, we just include those four numbers. And then we do a comma. And then it's like saying, well, what's the expected range? And then we come over here and we hit bracket and enter, and there we go. There's our p-value. So this is a highly statistically significant result. So let's use this. Basically what they're saying is that the chances of the null hypothesis being true are very low, right? If we've got a p-value of 0.000, so it's saying that the null hypothesis is likely wrong and that there is a difference. There likely is a difference. So even though we've got a small sample, if we took another sample from that same target population, we would expect to see those differences play out again. Okay, so let's go back and see how we can actually use this for our own results. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go back over here I'm just going to paste it somewhere like here. Okay, and then let's just make these a bit smaller, a bit more. There we go. Okay, so I've still got my chi-square here. You're going to have to type this in, of course, and I'm just going to replace these with the categories that I actually have. So, of course, on the top I have my target market and my others. And then I have my international and domestic. And then I'm just going to delete this. And then I'm actually going to type in the totals that I have. So I'm just going to copy this table so I can get the data more easily. Put this here. Smaller. There we go. So just remember what these are. So that's others, right? 0 is others, and 1 is target market, and then no is actually domestic because it's are you international, and then yes is international. So just make sure that we've got the right numbers in the right box here. So because they're actually in a different order. So we've got domestic others. So we've got domestic others there. Then we've got international others. And we've got domestic target market. Domestic target market, great. And there we go, international target market. And then we can just double check. We can actually just use the sum. We'll just do that here. 100, yeah, that's great. And then 262, that's great, domestic. And then let's just do it here. Got 80 in the target market, yep. 282, great, and then we can just copy that down there. Perfect. Okay, so that's our actual. Now we need to figure out what our expected would be. So I'm actually just going to copy this straight here. I'm just going to paste the values. Okay, and I'm going to delete these 4 cells in the middle because that's what we need to figure out now. And so this is how we figure out what the expected value would be. So this is a little bit tricky, but just follow along and you'll get it just fine. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So to find out what the expected value is in this cell, we're going to do equals, and then we're going to do this total times this total divided by the total. So there we go. Our expected value here is 22. And you can see here it's 24, so it's pretty close, right? We need to do this for the rest of the numbers. Now you could go through and just do the same, equals, this times this divided by this, or we could actually use our dollar signs to create that formula so we can just copy and paste. So let's figure this out. So if we want to copy this, we want this P number. Well, actually, we don't want it to shift to the Q, right? So we need P to stay in the same column. But we want this 17 to go down, because if we're going to paste it down, we want it to move down, okay? This N, we don't want the N to stay, because we want it to move over. But we do want the 19 to stay, because we don't want it to move up or down, because we need that row. So I'm going to put a dollar sign before the 19. And then this one, P19, we actually want it to stay both columns, and we want it to stay with the row that it's in. So I'm going to put a dollar sign before the P and before the number, the 19. There we go. And so now I can just copy and paste this. And there we go. And so you'll see there's the p-value just updated. So the difference between what we would expect, 77.9 and 76, 204 and 206, it's different, but it is not statistically significant. We've got a p-value of 0.590. Let's just go back and see this real quick. 0.590 is close to 0.6. So it's different, but it's not statistically significant. So we can't claim that, if we were to take another sample from the target population, those numbers might not be, there might be a small difference again, but it might be the other way around this time. It's not big enough to be certain or confident that those differences would play out in the wider population. So there's our p-value, and because it is less, because it's more than 0.05, I'm just going to report it with the 3 decimal points, which is 0.590. Just have to make sure it's got those 3 decimal points. There we go. Great. So let's actually look at the Ted Rogers students, just to give you this example. I want to see that you can do this. So I'm going to copy this all again. Actually, I'm just going to change it here. So it's, we'll just call this TRS and others. Okay, and we'll delete these. We'll call this TRS and others. And let's figure this out. So we've got, I'm just going to copy this data over. Oh, it's in percentages, but we don't want percentages. We need the, let's just get this right. Show values as no calculation. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the data over so it's nice and easy to just plop into my okay, so let's just make sure we got these labeled right so we don't get confused. So let's just focus on the TRS. So we've got 150 TRS in others, and then we've got 59 TRS in the target market. And then, I could either just add all of these up individually, or I'm actually just going to do this. I'm going to put the total others is 283, and the total target market is 81. And then I can just do this equals this minus this. There we go. Okay, so that will give it to us. Great. Then I need to copy this over, and I'm going to paste the, well, actually, I don't need to change the cells here because that's got the right formula. So I can just copy this over and paste this as values. And this I'll paste as values too. There we go. And so we can see the difference now. So we would, if there was no relationship, we'd expect this number to be 46, but it's actually 59, so it's quite different, right? I would expect this number to be 34, but it's actually 22, so it's quite different. And there's our p-value, it's actually 0.001. So we need to figure out, is it more or less than 0.01? So we're just going to, okay, so it's actually more than 0.001, but that means it's less than 0.01. Okay, so this one is less than 0.01. There we go. So we can be confident that those differences would play out in the wider target population. If we were to go and recruit a different sample from the same target population, we would expect that these results, they would change a bit, but the pattern would still be there. That's what it means. So we can be more confident to make a recommendation based on this difference. That's what it means. Okay. So this is how we would put it into the paper. So first, you're going to have to figure out what these p-values are. We're going to rate these or rank these by highest from lowest. So right now, that's the highest, 3629, and yeah, it's actually the same. So we'll just call it 3. We're going to put TikTok first. But if Downtown Young is higher than Facebook, you've got to put it, you've got to rank these in order, right? And My Own Friends, I suspect, is going to be possibly the highest. So that might be the top one. So you've got to order those in the right order. But you're going to copy this, and then we're going to go to our Word doc. Table 2 goes here, so I'm going to delete that and paste. And I'm just going to format this so that it goes to auto-fit and auto-fit contents. That's great. These are just a bit off, so I'm just going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to put these as central. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. Great. So there's my table. I want to make sure, of course, that it's all on one page. So actually, let's just for the sake of this video, let's just hit it there. There we go. And so then how do we report this? How do we describe what's going on here? Well, there's a couple of things. Let's look at, say, international students, right? So we could say international students made up a higher proportion of the target market than others. We'll say 30.0% versus 27.0%. However, this was not a significant difference. And then we put the p-value. 590. Okay, so that's how we report that. And then let's pick a one that is significant. Let's do a t-test down here. So we'll say Facebook. We could say the target market were significantly more likely to report using Facebook as a way to find information. So it was significantly more likely than others. Maybe that's the best way to say it. On events, things to do. And we report the results, so it would be 2.4 versus 1.8, and then P is less than 0.001. Okay, and that's how we would report those differences. And so, again, when we start to think about making recommendations, there's two things we're going to be looking for. The target market, or whoever we're interested in, the ones that they're using the most, the highest, are going to be most interesting, right? Even if, if TikTok is the highest, even if it's not statistically different between those, the target market and the others, it's still useful. We still want to promote using TikTok to capture the target market. So, but then the other thing to think about is the differences. So if you were to market on Facebook, you would be more likely to reach your target market than others. It wouldn't be the highest, but it would be a more targeted approach to do that. So it still might not be the best recommendation, but it's about trying to use this information to provide nuanced, evidence-based recommendations. Okay, great. And then finally, the column chart. So we're just going to do the column chart for, actually, I'm going to change this, target market and others on sources of information. Okay, so we're just going to do it on this part of the table. Okay, so this is how you do the column chart. So we're actually going to use this data here. You're going to have numbers here. Don't know what they are, so I'm just going to leave them blank for now, but you'll need to reorder. I suspect my own friend is going to be higher, so it's probably going to be the top. So reorder them in the rank. We need to then add the labels at the top here, and we're just going to highlight that data. Actually, I'm going to delete that. I don't think we want that. And then we come up here and we go to insert, and we go to column chart and 2D column charts, just that one there, straightforward. Great. But of course we need to format this a little bit differently. So let's just bring this up here like this, just to make it a bit easier to see. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the chart title, just like we did with the pie chart. We're going to keep that there. We're going to add data labels. So we're going to go over here, data labels, and right-clicking on each of these. Perfect. Then we're going to turn this to Times New Roman. And 12. And is that it? No, we need to get rid of this gray border. So you could either right-click and format, or you can come up here and shape outline and no outline. And there we go. And I can just copy this, come to my Word document, and put it where it's supposed to be. And so then, the figure title goes underneath. That should all be on the same page, right? We don't want to have that overlap. So there we go. We got the title there, so we don't need the title on the actual chart. And then we should be referring to the chart in our text too. So back up here, we might say, there's the data, and we could say here something like, see figure 2, so that we're reminding people where the data is that we're talking about. And that's it. So you're going to go through, you're going to create this table, you're going to add these numbers and make sure they're correct. You're going to add a few sentences here. You can borrow this language, but you should add a bit more. Maybe from the new results, you'll find something a bit more interesting. And then you're going to, of course, you got your introduction and your sampling critique. And then you're going to highlight all of this and delete this information and save it as a PDF and submit it with your PDF file. Okay, that's it. Do come to class, ask questions, post on the course Q&A. If you do have any questions about this, I encourage you to share a screenshot of your Excel. If you've got a problem with your Excel file, you're not sure how to do something, if you can take a screenshot and post it to the discussion board, it will just make it a lot easier for me to respond to you and tell you exactly what you're looking and what you're missing. All right, that's it. Good luck. I'll see you soon.